Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics, back with the Pint Size Table Runner for April. When I sat down to design this, I wanted to think about April. April showers bring May flowers, and so it's very true, especially up here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We definitely have those seasons, and we look forward to spring. So looking at the project here, this is a collection from Laundry Basket by Andover called Lady Tulip, and which is why I added the tulips in there, of course, with a collection that is really celebrating tulips. I couldn't resist that. And then I picked that kind of streaky fabric like it's rain, and of course that's why we put the umbrella in. A little more applique this time than we've seen the previous 2 months. We started this, of course, with our February project with Valentine's, followed by our fun celebration of Irish block and kind of the Irish theme for March, and now moving on to kind of those rain showers that come in April. So really fun on this block. I love the harmony of the colors together, very soothing. I love Edita Sitar. She is the powerhouse behind Laundry Basket quilts, and her collections are just amazing, and this one does not disappoint. I absolutely love it. More projects, by the way, check out the website for more projects from Lady Tulip. But this one is, of course, the Pint Size Table Runner. Your kit, limited kits available, will include all of the fabrics, including your backing fabric, and of course, you know, all of that applique will be pre-fused, laser cut for you, which makes it so quick and easy. You can be diving right into the fun of then just placing your shapes down and then stitching down with the thread set. So be sure to pick up that kit, limited quantities. So looking at the block, that's what we'll be making together. And again, like the previous month, I couldn't resist adding in the sashing and the little cornerstone in the middle, just to add kind of a fun connection to the umbrella stripe there. And I love how it kind of built this little special block right in the middle. So let's just look at this. Very simple, straightforward. As always, remember that when we're going to be piecing, add sizing to that fabric. Give it a really good press. And then, of course, the fresh blade. In fact, I just changed my blade before we started rolling the cameras today so I could get a nice clean cut. Simple little square right there in the center. And you can see we did a little bit of strip piecing here. And half square triangles. That's it. You're sewing the blocks together, repeating that 4 times, adding the sashing, the cornerstone, and then you get to move on to the fun of the applique on both ends. But let's break that down. Maybe you're just brand new to quilting. Welcome to the amazing world of all the possibilities of quilting. And by the way, if you didn't have a chance to pick up those previous 2 kits, I know we have some limited quantities available. As always, this is a free download. If you want to use your own fabrics, by all means do that. We just want you to start making and creating. This will be a free pattern for a limited time. So if you do want to use your own fabrics, be sure to grab that pattern right away. And then if you're like, nope, I want Shabby Fabrics to do all the design work, all the laser cutting, be sure to pick up the kit. So getting started, when we made the block, doesn't matter really where you start. Get your fabrics cut out nice and clean. Of course, your centers, easy, put that aside. Let's just start talking about our strip piecing. So you'll have your 2 strips just like that. You'll be placing them right side together and just sewing a really good solid 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's your focus on this. And then once you have that sewn together, I just did a small unit here. Just press that seam open. In fact, I'll show you the back of our block. This helped. We made the project actually twice, and we found that when we pressed the strip piece unit open instead of pressing to the dark side, it helped the block lay a lot flatter into the final assembly when we did our quilting. So we found that to be helpful. So once you have that strip piece unit complete, that's where you want to make sure you're getting a nice clean cut. And how I really kind of manage that, I start off always using the lines on my mat to establish my edge, right? We need to start with something to establish a nice clean edge. And so I do line up the top of that fabric initially, and then my ruler squaring that up. And once we have that, and now we get ready to cut our units, and these are cut to 2.5, that's when I go straight to my ruler, and I'm going to be using the dark side. The dark dots are 2, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. We know that about Creative Grid. And around here on this side, those white dots are representing whole numbers. So I have learned to use the technology of the Creative Grid to my benefit. I'm going to take that line right there, right across the top. Hopefully we're zeroing in on that from the overhead camera. So I have this guidance here and this guidance here to know that when I make this cut, I'm right on the money. Those types of discipline and just double checking is going to lead to a much more precisely pieced block, which of course is what we're after. You'll repeat that same cutting technique for 4 pieces per block, of course, for a total of 16 for making all 4 of those blocks. So that's all there really is to the strip piecing. For the half square triangles, let's give you some options. We'll talk about kind of the standard option. As you know, I'm a big fan of upsizing and trimming down. I like to give myself just a little bit more, I like to piece a block when I have squared up pieces because it kind of clicks together more like a puzzle. So for that reason, we have upsized these. This is going to end up being 2.5 unfinished. So we start with 3-inch squares, and what that does for us is give us just a little bit of a leeway to be able to square that up. And I'm going to actually walk you through this one. I want to do this with you, and then I'm going to give you an option. So the traditional way to make half square triangles is to just lay a ruler, a straight edge, from diagonal to diagonal, drawing on the back side of your lightest fabric. You're going to stack those right side together, and we'll just put a pin in there. And our goal here is to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that line, and it's really more of a scant quarter. What that scant means is just a slightly under, and the easiest way that I accomplish that is to actually have my presser foot riding just to the right of that line as I'm tracking down. Hopefully, let's go to the sewing machine. Let's see if we can capture that. So when I think about this, let me just lower that presser foot right here. So my presser foot right now, I can either be where I clearly see the line to my right, or where I move my fabric just a little bit, where my presser foot is almost riding on the line. That's where I'm going to be. For me, that's a scant quarter. That's going to give me a better chance of having more fabric available to square up. So let's give that scant quarter. And then I'm going to come around to the other side. And I'm going to come back down and do the same thing on this side. Okay. And we had already done a sample of that ahead of time, but I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about where to be relative to that line. I'll use the one that I just sewed with you, and we'll cut that straight on the line here. And for this purpose, notice we like to press toward the dark on this. Now remember, this is upsized. We need to bring this down to 2.5 inches, and we'll do that. I'll be using my Creative Grid 2.5-inch ruler, and I've got a spinning mat, which is kind of my favorite combination The beautiful part about using a spinning mat in combination with a square up ruler is I don't have to touch the fabric. Once I lay that down, I can leave that in place and rotate around that. So let's make a little bit of space. Let me grab that spinning mat here. And I will show you. So we know this is bigger than our 2.5 by quite a bit actually. So let's look at the Creative Grid 2.5 here. It's got all kinds of lovely features, and where I'm focusing right now, I'll try to get my head out of the way. I know sometimes because I'm trying to see it, but I want you to see it. So we've got our diagonal line. My goal right now, where I'm positioning this ruler, the only thing I'm lining up with is my diagonal. But I'm making sure that I'm leaving enough space that I get to square up on all 4 sides. That's the goal. I don't want to just square. I don't want to try to bias this in the corner. No. You want to square up all 4 sides of this. So I'll give that a cut. Notice I don't have to move my fabric. I move the mat. If you bump it, you just kind of square up and rotate. Now, when I have that, the chance of this marrying up, look how they're dead on. This is the beautiful part. If you want precise blocks, this is the combination. That is the combination. I can't tell you for how many years, my blocks were not really ever coming out. They were always a little short. And I think it's because I never oversized them just a bit to give me some breathing room. And I tended to sew with a greater than 1/4 inch seam allowance for whatever reason. That was really kind of my habit, kind of a bad habit. And my blocks were always under. And so I've learned to use tools to assist me. And even if you don't want to use a 2.5 inch grid ruler, that's fine. Use something to help square that block up to your 2.5 inches. Now that you have all the elements put together here, I mentioned I was going to give you an option. Here's a great option. This is my favorite option actually. Star singles. What I just showed you was the way I learned how to make half square triangles. There really wasn't another way back in the day when I learned how. Since that time, a product you've probably, if you've been watching our videos at any amount of time, you've probably seen this product called Star Singles. It's amazing. What the Star Singles do, let's look at this. They allow you to basically sew on paper, just like this. We've already sewn this together, and make 8 half square triangles all at the same time. No squaring up required. So that step you just saw me do, you'd be skipping all of that. Let's look at that one. I want to show you what this will look like. So the paper tells us exactly what to do. Cut 6-inch squares of fabric, place squares right sides together, place paper on top and pin. We've done that. You're going to sew on the dotted lines with a much shortened stitch length, by the way. I'd be dialing this back to maybe 1.5. And you're going to sew all on these dash lines, stopping at those points that have the dark circles with the needle down. So we start sewing, 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 stop, needle down, rotate. Come down path number 2, needle down, rotate. Continuing all the way around and sewing straight off. That's what we've done right here. Once you've done that, then you simply cut on the solid lines. Pointer. One thing I've learned is to upsize my squares going into this. They say to cut 6-inch squares. If we measure this paper is 6 1/4 inches. Notice my fabric is now extending beyond my paper. That's because we ended up cutting ours to 6.5. I've learned to upsize my fabric from the stated measurement on there so that I can absolutely see my fabric around the perimeter and know that I have captured that fabric during my process of sewing around on the dash lines. Once it's sewn together, we will go now and cut on the solid lines just like they've stated. I'm trying not to bump my block. I want to show you, I want to get a piece out of this and show you that if you use the star singles, you don't need to upsize, you don't need to square up. The paper does all the work for you. For this project, you would need the 2-inch star singles. Star singles are always measured on the finished size of the half square triangle. That's really important, the finished size. So knowing that this is a 6-inch block, that's going to finish at 2, finish at 2, finish at 2. That's why we've got the 2-inch star singles. So when you tear the paper away, you'll just peel this back, kind of fold that back, I should say. And because of your shortened stitch length, it's really very perforated. So we'll just tear that away. And once again, we will press to the dark. I'm going to trim that up, and let's go measure that. That iron cooled down here while I was talking, so I'm going to let that sit there a little bit longer than normal. And let's go check that out. We've got our 2.5-inch ruler. Let's just lay that on there and see how that's doing. Incredible. Absolutely on the mark. So if you don't want to upsize and square up and take that extra step in time, just get the star singles. They're amazing, and you make 8 half square triangles at a time. So with one piece of that paper, you're going to make enough for 2 blocks. You only have to do this 2 times, and then you'll have all 8 of your half square, actually all 16 of your half square triangles to make your blocks. Okay, once you have that, you can see the assembly is very straightforward. You're simply sewing these together, right sides together, 1/4-inch seam allowance. Here, same, sewing these rows together, and then or sewing these rows together and then sewing the block together. And again, let me just flip that over. You can see here our pressing that we did. So that might be helpful for you if you are going to be, again, sewing from home. That's how we press that. Of course, you can press that any way that you want. Very straightforward on the assembly of this, and obviously very simple. All right, I love that part. Sometimes I like, there are times that I like a block being really complex, and there's times I'm like, oh, that's very achievable. This is very achievable, even for a beginner. All right, once you've got those 6 blocks, we talked about this back in the March kit, your sashing strips, because our block is going to be 6.5, you'll be cutting 4 of those to be 1 inch by 6.5. And of course, once we sew our blocks together, make sure you're pressing toward your sashing unit here. And then you've got your cute little cornerstone. You could fussy cut the flower. We chose to do that here so we could kind of capture that. So you'll put your patchwork together, and then comes the 2 ends. So let's take a look at this one. Really fun on the applique. As I said before, a little more elaborate on this one. I couldn't resist to add a bow to the umbrella, just a little sweetness there. So let's take a look here. Of course, we're going to make our ends separate from our umbrella. And as I examine the umbrella, notice here, and we'll cover that right now. This is really fun because shape number 1, which is going to be behind, in fact, let me just peel that paper back. We'll talk about it, and then we'll actually go iron that down together. Let me turn my heat down to a medium. That's your first pointer. Make sure if you are we've been doing patchwork, right? Heat's been all the way hot. Now it's time for applique. Dial that back to medium. This is piece 1, and the next piece that is coming is our piece 2, and that is going to be extending up and above. So when we put piece 3, we kind of have that dimension that's kind of projecting upward, and that I thought that was a really fun touch. So I will iron those together, and then of course we just did our simple little tulips on the end. With the bow, we have kind of a little more delicate. You've got your kind of bow tails, and of course your red in the background, and then the knot, and of course your pink. There's no need to make the umbrella and the bow all at the same time. Notice these are different elements. That's how I recommend you do applique. Is there's no need to try to lay all 19 pieces out at the same time. There's just no need to do that. So let's go ahead and get that applique fusing mat ready to go. And we know our arrangement. So our sequence will be light box. This is the wafer 2. Our assembly diagram. On comes the applique fusing mat. I can see my shapes. We know this is number 1. So let's press that down. And I love that tackiness. My shapes aren't moving around on me if I give them a press. They are down. Same with that. And now here. Just a reminder, as much as I wish we could iron on that light box, we can't do that. So that's someday, every day I'm thinking, someday someone's going to invent a light box that's so heat tolerant that I can iron straight on this and I don't have to move it. But until that time, we move that over to our wool pressing mat, leave that iron on a good 5-6 seconds. And of course, we need to let that cool down. One thing I wanted to show you on this one is, you can, in the previous months, I've been saying, cut that background to exactly the size that it needs to be. We wanted to show you on this month moving forward that this is more applique going on. And sometimes people like to square up after they do the applique. You can absolutely do that. Bethany set this up for me to be able to demonstrate. She laid this scallop. She just let the background be larger than is the footprint here, because this footprint is a 5.5, I believe, by 13 on this one to accommodate our sashing strip. We just left our background piece a little bit bigger, and she set that scallop about 1/4 inch down. What that does for us is it allows us to sew everything down with our beautiful applique thread and go back later and square that up to be the exact size we want it to be. So that's just an option for you that I didn't talk about in our first 2 months. But if you're at, we've been now doing this a couple months, I want to give you those options. I want to add to those possibilities of things you might consider to do. So let's look at that. If you should decide to do that, you're still going to be using the assembly diagram to put your shapes down. It's just you're putting them on a bigger background and trimming them down later. But let's go ahead and work with a fresh piece of background. And I think this too is also a little bit bigger. It is, and that's fine. I will set my shapes on there. I'm going to kind of just get that so I'm about the same distance traveling above that line, so that later on when I go to trim that up, I'm square to my kind of rain that's coming down. I could not resist using this fabric to look like rain. I was literally smiling in my design room while I was putting this thing together. I think coloring quilts is one of my favorite parts of my job. In fact, I know it's the favorite part of my job, and getting to teach you how to do these things. So I've just peeled off my umbrella. Notice it's now one shape. And I'll lay that down. Let's put our bow on. We pre-assembled that. We can absolutely bring that on. And I'll put the tulips on. So cute. I am not sure where that scallop is right now. That's okay. You get the idea. If I had that with me, I would put that on there. I'm going to try to just move that over there just like that. Isn't that, can you imagine cutting out the intricacies of these bows? I remember in my early days of applique when, you're tracing and you're cutting and hoping that you can be as smooth as you want to be, and it never quite was. Just the convenience and the accuracy and precision of laser. I love that because I want to get to putting the shapes down. I want to get to sewing them down. and all those fun things that I love to do. So that's how we would assemble. Obviously, we put our strip on there, and that's when I would, you know, straight stitch, blanket stitch, whatever you want to do to stitch around that. And then when you get ready to really square up your block, you can simply measure, or if you're more comfortable going back to the light box, and we're going to pretend our scallop is there again, and simply drawing the boundaries of that, and then trimming your block up to that. However you want to do it, if you choose to oversize, or simply cut your background piece to the exact size that you want it to be, and you don't have to worry about trimming that up. Once you have done the applique on both ends, just like the previous 2 months, we'll be sewing those together and, you know, pressing as desired, either toward the applique or toward your patchwork. And then we went ahead and added that batting and backing, and just did a little bit of quilting on that. And of course we did our binding. I love this one. We kind of went vertical with the stitching on that. Hopefully we can get a close-up. We added some circles to pretend like those are raindrops, and added just some fun, simple kind of patchwork quilting details. So there's a lot coming. Remember what I said about April showers bring May flowers? So maybe we might see some flowers coming up in May. You certainly will. They're very busy designing that one, of course, and the rest of the series for you. Hey, if you haven't already subscribed, or let a friend know to subscribe, be sure to do that. We do these videos for you, and we love to get your feedback. If there's other things you'd love to see us do, we read every single comment you post, and we welcome that feedback, and we want to hear the projects that you're hoping to see. So thanks again for giving me part of your day, and I'll see you soon on another Shabby video.